Welcome, everyone, to the January 26, 2021 Development Review Commission hearing. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including, but not limited to, all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment through the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning. By promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interests of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to the City Council are not final decisions. With us today from the Development Review Commission are regular members, myself, Michael DiDomenico, Vice Chair, Steve Bauer, Don Casano, Phil Amorosi, Andrew Johnson, and Scott Sumners. And also filling in for us tonight is alternate Michelle Schwartz. With staff here in Council Chambers, Steve Abrahamson and Brittany Nelson. And I believe, by looking at the names on the screen, joining us by WebEx, Ryan Levesque, Saparna Dasgupta, Diana Kaminsky, Karen Stovall, Dalton Guerra, Greg Wolf, and Joanna Berry. If I've missed anyone, I apologize, but your names and faces are still on screen. We have a fairly simple and concise agenda tonight. During study session, the Commission discussed two sets of minutes. They are the study session and regular meeting minutes from the January 12th, 2021 meeting. And we did not have any corrections, additions, or edits to those. So I will entertain a motion for approval of those two sets of minutes.
Chairman DiDomenico, this is Don Casano. I would make a motion to accept the study session of 1/12/2021 and the regular meeting minutes of 1/12/2020 as drafted.
Do we have a second?
Second. Phil
Phil
Amorosi.
Thank you, Phil. Michelle, were you, I don't recall, were you at that meeting or are you abstaining?
I'll be abstaining today.
Okay. I'll go down the list and we'll do a voice vote. Steve Bauer.
Aye.
Mr. Casano.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Scott Sumners.
Aye.
Bill Amorosi.
Aye.
And Andrew Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The meeting minutes for those two meetings have been approved. Next on our agenda, just to point out, item number 3, originally scheduled for tonight's agenda, which dealt with an appeal of a decision on Red Devil Plaza, has been withdrawn from the agenda. We will not be hearing that case tonight, so if you have joined our meeting hoping to learn more about that, it is no longer on the agenda. We have proposed item number 4, which is Astonished Massage and Facial Spa, for the consent agenda. Do we see anyone else who's joined? If you've logged onto the WebEx as an attendee and wish to be heard or have this case heard, let us know now. Get our attention. Raise your hand on the screen. All right, I don't see anyone wishing to hear this case, so I will entertain a motion for approval. First of all, what this means is the consent agenda means that it's the Commission's intention to approve any items included in the consent agenda as drafted and with the stipulations as included in the staff report, just as drafted with no changes. We would do so in one singular vote. In this case, there's only one case, item number 4 for the consent agenda. Motion, anyone?
Mr. Chairman, this is Don Casano. I would make a motion for approval of the consent agenda, and that's item PL 200280.
And do we have a second?
Second. Johnson.
We have a motion by Don Casano and a second by Commissioner Andrew Johnson. All those in favor, Mr. Bauer,
Aye.
Mr. Casano,
Aye.
Michelle Schwartz.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Scott Sumners
Aye.
and Commissioner Amorosi.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved unanimously. The next item on our agenda, as scheduled, is item number 5. This is a case involving Superstar Car Wash. We had some last-minute changes to this particular case, and so we're going to kind of handle this a little differently. It's my understanding that the applicant may be interested in a continuance, and so to verify that, we're going to bring the applicant on right off the bat here and find out what their intention is. And so do we have the applicant, I believe represented by Brian Turco? I'm looking on my list.
Chairman, it's going to be either Paul or Brennan. One of them would be representing tonight.
Okay, so either Brennan Ray, I see, is available.
Yes, hopefully you can hear me, Chair, members of the Commission. Brendan Ray, 1850 North Central, on behalf of the operator of this car wash. It was recently brought to our attention that there have been some concerns expressed by the neighbors, and because of that, we would, being unaware of them, would like to request a continuance for tonight. And the reason that we want to request this continuance is to conduct a voluntary neighborhood meeting to listen to some of the concerns that have been expressed to staff, and I believe forwarded to this commission. So happy to answer any specific questions that you might have relative to this case, but as far as it goes tonight, we would request a continuance actually to a date certain. If we could continue it to your February 23rd hearing, we would appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that update, and I think that's admirable to want to include a neighborhood meeting and take some public comment. So fantastic way to handle things, and we appreciate your flexibility. Staff, is there any issues with that date for a meeting? Is that currently a scheduled date?
Chairman, it is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Is there anything else, Karen, this was your case, anything else we need to consider before taking a motion on that continuance? I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to just assume that's a no. So I will consider a motion for a continuance to February 23rd, 2021.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Sumners. I would move to recommend continuance of Superstar Car Wash PL 200232 to the February 23rd, 2021 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Casano. I would second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to approve of the continuance to our February 23rd, 2021 meeting. Any discussion? Any comments from the public? I see nothing, so I will call for a vote. Commissioner Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Casano,
Aye.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Commissioner Sumners,
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. To the applicant, thank you very much. Appreciate that effort. This brings us to our final item on tonight's agenda. This item is a little bit more complex. There's actually 3 things being requested here. We have a zoning map amendment, we have a planned area development overlay, and the third item is a request for a development plan review. This project is known currently as Rio East. Our tradition here is to bring the applicant up to tell us about their particular project and make their case, followed by bringing staff up to fill in any missing information, and then a call to the public for comments. Applicant, you will definitely have a chance to then come back up and address anything that you've heard in public comments in the staff presentation.
Chairman,
Yes, Aparna?
I may have misspoken. I'm not exactly sure, but I just wanted to clarify on behalf of the applicant. For this one, we have to date only received 1 public comment, not 3. So I just wanted to make sure the 3 was for the Star Car Wash, and for this one,
Right.
there's only just 1. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So right.
With that,
So today, of our list of attendees, we only expect
Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Brooks.
as
I
a
see
public-
I see 2 other hands up, Kelsey and David, and a Larry. Oh, I wish I had my glasses on. DeGenis. So I don't know if they also wish to be heard on this.
That one, Chairman, was for the previous
For the car wash.
car wash, yes.
Okay, not for this case. Okay, so at this point in time, we may not have as much public comment, but more may pop up before the meeting is over. I'd call the applicant up to present their case.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission, and staff. This is Ben Graff. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Let me first start. I'm always remiss if I forget to thank the city and all of you for accommodating these ongoing virtual hearings during
Ben,
the
can I
pandemic.
stop you for just a second?
Sure.
Yes, I did. Mr. Graff, could you just for the record state your address, your city of residence?
Absolutely. Ben Graff with the law firm of Quarles and Brady, here representing Streetlights Residential. Address is 2 North Central Avenue, Phoenix, Arizona, 85004.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so I did want to thank you, of course, for your ongoing efforts to have these virtual hearings. We appreciate it. The public appreciates it. Thank you just for all that you're doing to serve. We're very excited to bring this new segment of development for Rio East to your attention tonight. Next slide. We've put together quite a team. We've been working with Streetlights Residential on this property ongoing over 8 years. Our Quarles and Brady team, Butler Design, put together the work and design for the retail portion tonight. And our ownership is Tom LeClaire, who has been with, of course, Tellurine Development and the Rio Sequel LLC. And Adrian Everque is the underlying owner for the existing Boyer office. Next slide. Chairman, you did a great job outlining the 3 requests, so I won't need to repeat that. I will go into it. The proposals that allow for the MU4 PAD will include and wrap in the existing Boyer office building on Lot 1, a newly proposed 335-unit luxury residential community, and a new 13,500 square foot retail and restaurant use on Lot 3. Next slide. Next slide. This is probably one of my favorite exhibits because, as most of you are aware, maybe the first time I presented on this case, we were showing a map that was a landfill, and piece by piece, we've worked with Boyer, we've worked with hotel groups, we've worked with Streetlights Residential, and of course the underlying developer and master planner, Tom LeClaire, to remediate what was a landfill into a true mixed-use development. The subject property in blue is what we're here to talk about tonight. This will be designated as MU4 and allow for the 3 various uses. I'm going to go ahead and just address this real quickly, and then of course I can address any questions at the end. The only opposition I'm aware of to this case tonight, and in fact, for the record, the only opposition we've had to any development for this entire master plan community has come in from the litigation attorney for the adjacent property to the east of our site, which is still a active industrial use. Again, I can answer more questions at the end, but for my legal interpretation as a zoning attorney, the opposition is based on a pending piece of litigation that's requesting access between these 2 sites. From what I've read, unlike other opposition which has come in from neighbors on any typical zoning cases, I have not found that the opposition technically has merit in the realm of a zoning hearing. The courts will determine the pending litigation, but I have not seen any actual zoning issues or development issues with our site. So I'm sure Mr. Brooks will be here to address that. But again, for this evening's purposes, I will focus on the land use and zoning issues and answer any questions the commission may have. Next slide. This is a quick breakdown of how the existing office, then the multifamily is the larger curved parcel toward the bottom, and then toward the east along Rio Salado is the retail. Next slide. Next slide. The current zoning for the majority of this area is the heavy industrial, but as you'll see in the next slide, which you can go ahead and change, as is well known, this entire area has been slated for mixed use by the city's general plan and actually asks for densities in excess of 60 dwellings per acre, here 65. So everything that we've been doing to change this from, of course, industrial and landfill piece by piece to mixed use development, and of course the true mixed use proposal you have tonight of office, multifamily, and retail fits squarely within the city's plans for this site. Next slide. Again, just a contextual picture a bit up close. You can see that the existing office to the north has direct access and flow through to the multifamily below. River Drive is a private drive, which then comes out onto Rio Salado and provides its own access point and traffic mitigation. I can get into this a bit later, but I will note here that based on prior traffic reports, it was noted that even prior to proposing such a development as you have before you tonight, a new traffic signal would need to be installed at River and Rio Salado. I'm happy to report that that has been installed by the master developer. It's functioning today, and that was a huge step toward making sure that there was proper traffic mitigation for this area. Next slide. Next slide as well. You can skip this one. So at this point, we've been working with city staff through the normal process. I'm very happy to report that out of all the back and forth with Diana Kaminsky and her team, what's before you tonight, the staff report, the stipulations, we are in full support. We are not asking for any modifications to the stipulations, and we just appreciate the feedback, which has always, I think, made it a much better project, much better design. And we are coming to you with a recommendation of approval from city staff. Next slide. Just a quick bit of history. It's a little odd that we have an existing office, right, that's already been developed and approved as part of this. Just a bit of history. When the office was proposed, it was the planning staff's preference that that eventually be pulled into an MU4 zoning category along with the residential and retail. So we've accommodated that request by incorporating the underlying land, but nothing before you tonight tweaks or changes any of the prior approvals for the office. It remains exactly as the city previously approved it. Next slide, please. Next slide. And you can see this is the office as it's built today. Always impressive what Butler Design and Boyer puts together. Next slide. The second component, which is of course newly proposed, is phase 2. Previously on the larger exhibit, Streetlights Residential is already developed at the northwest corner of the 2100 Rio Salado project, the Cameron. The Cameron is also a luxury multifamily development with numerous amenities. It's renting and leasing with great success right now. And so this project would be phase 2 at 335 units, 4 stories, 4.5-story parking structure, which is wrapped with the design. We have a mix of bedrooms, and the height proposed here for our use is only approximately 70 feet. But the overall PAD allows for up to 79 feet, and that's to incorporate the existing office height. So our height is certainly, although a PAD is needed to get this height, it is in line with existing heights. Next slide, please. We can answer any specific site plan questions as needed, but this is a brief zoom in on the multifamily development site. I think the renderings will tell a better picture shortly. Next slide. So the elevations about to show you were, of course, an important point of discussion with Diana Kaminsky and staff. We wanted to stay away from any non-variation flat effect, especially since we are an entry feature and framing feature along Rio Salado. As you'll see soon, we have multiple pop-outs, windows, balconies, canopies, many ins and outs, all blended in with a contemporary Spanish Pueblo revival architecture. And I think that the materials, the color effects, next slide, have just really all created amazing accents. Even our roof features really blend in well, and we have we have addressed with staff, and we're happy to accommodate multiple different requests to basically camouflage the wrapped garage. And we're very happy with how that ends up looking right now. Next slide. So as you can see here, just from these rendering photographs, this is not a boring architectural piece. We've worked very closely with Streetlights and their internal design team to really respond to the material articulation and just the interest that this site brings in along with our landscaping features. Next slide. Just overall standard elevation, but it shows you how the building is broken up and there's some depth along Rio Salado. Next slide. Here is a kind of a distance view of where the garage is actually wrapped along the west elevation. Next slide. And this is just another good perspective, again, probably better in the renderings of some of the dimensions. And in fact, if you can go to the next slide, and let's see if we can get this to work. If you could go ahead and press play, we'll walk you through a rendering that our architects put together. Perfect. I hope the board can see this. We're really proud of this feature. We think it really tells the story better than a zoning attorney does. And we wanted to show you this to really emphasize the depth of the facade, highlight the shadow play along the buildings. The architects have really driven themselves to create a richly detailed contemporary Southwestern resort feel. And you know, the scale of the pedestrian experience we think is important here with breaking down large lengths of facade, allowing for cart yards, really intimate areas, depths in and out of streets. And the predominantly white facade is actually very intentional, of course. It's meant to reflect the Arizona sky, create a crisp sunset and sunrise feature. And we've combined all of this with very lush front setback landscaping and something that will truly accommodate and attract people to the future light rail and other accommodations along Rio Salado. So I hope that was a good feature for you to see. Next slide, please. And these were just in case we had a complete failure of technology, so I can get through these a little bit faster. Next slide, please. Next. And next. And next slide. Thank you again to staff for helping coordinate that presentation. We appreciate it. The other component is, of course, the 13,500 square feet of retail, which also fronts along Rio Salado. This is single story in nature. Next slide. So these are going to be complementary in terms of building styles, colors, will really provide for a warmth and I think a great entrance experience off of Riffer Drive. And our materials, again, I think will really provide for not only an entrance experience, but something that will invite people to these new retail uses. We do have various canopy features, and if you go to the next slide, please. Obviously, we have the pandemic in mind, and with that being said, we've designed this in a manner that not only anticipates patio uses, but also the potential for up to 2 drive-through uses. Next slide. The retail and restaurant use is very flexible to accommodate where our market will be, although I think that our team is confident of where our economy and hopefully our world will be by the time construction would start and these would be open for business. We've also accommodated drive aisles that will allow for drop-off, pickup, curbside pickup of retail and restaurant. But we think this is a great feature, and we know from the relocation of Spanatos to the west and other retail uses that this is just becoming a very compatible use of the site that will frankly be used by both the multifamily residents and the employees at the offices. Next slide, please. This is a good south elevation at the top of what you would experience driving down Rio Salado. We've worked with the city to pull the buildings as close as feasible while also providing landscape setbacks. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. Our PAD is utilized to not only incorporate the height standards, but we've also outlined, if you'll go to the next slide, we've outlined a parking reduction for the multifamily. Again, the height here is not inconsistent with the existing offices. Next slide. This covers the height background, which originally started with a variance, but now is traditionally across most of the Rio Salado. Next slide. And I wanted to just address real quickly the 10% parking reduction. This was not done haphazardly. We hired a traffic engineer to do a parking feasibility and analysis, worked with staff. This was reviewed by planning staff and our traffic department. And although the overall study, I think, is very compelling and also reflects the fact that in a true mixed-use environment, you will have, of course, employees live, work, and playing in the area. But we were blessed with the ability to have the data from the existing Streetlights Residential Multifamily Cameron project. And we've seen that just based on rental trends and leasing, that the Cameron is already approximately 27% parked over the existing demand for leasing. And again, by no means does that reflect that we believe that the parking code is over 27%. But for this specific development in this area, a 10% parking reduction, we found that was feasible. That allowed us to have less garage space, less blacktop within that, and respond to, I think, a better design, quite frankly. So we have support from the city staff on that as well. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions from the presentation or any questions you may have from the source of opposition.
Commissioners, first of all, that was very well presented, very helpful. One quick question, the landscaping that we see in the flyby and the still photos, is that fairly representative of what's planned, or is that some artistic license?
I would say that it's very accurate in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with staff. Tree types, all tree types are somewhat yet to be determined, but it's a very close representation. I don't really like to show renderings that have the bells and whistles unless we're going to bring the bells and whistles.
Thank you. Commission, any questions? Let's see, Don, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Graff, the issue I'm bringing up is we were sent copies of the lawsuit I think has been filed. Can you explain a little bit how you interpret that not to impact your project, or why it should not delay any approvals we might grant on your project?
I'd be happy to do that. Is it possible to bring the presentation back up to the overall site plan or the overall master plan slide? And while we're getting to the right slide, let me be sure to clarify. I am not a litigator. I am not part of this litigation. I will let you know if need be, Andy Abraham, who is Tom LeClair's litigator, is on the phone and could be brought in. Not sure how many litigators you want to hear from in one night, but Andy is here if there's specific questions. But let me just give you the nuts and bolts of I think why we're left a bit confused with the opposition. The development agreement in question, I know you're not able to see my cursor, but the development agreement in question predates the land that's before you tonight coming into ownership by Mr. LeClair and being part of our development. That means that at the time the development agreement was put in place, the quote-unquote adjacent land to 2100 Rio Salado was in fact the land that's before you this evening. And that development agreement asked for there to be reasonably commercial efforts to gain or give access to adjacent properties. So just by the fact that Mr. LeClair purchased the property that's before you tonight and incorporated it into the development, that actually has given commercially reasonable access to that site. So frankly, we're confused by the claim itself, which of course is pending in court. So there's no reason in my knowledge, I mean, I may be the biased source being the attorney for the applicant here, but there's no legal basis in my knowledge why a DRC or even a city council would deny or bring question to the case based on pending litigation that's asking for access between the industrial site that's to your far east and the overall master plan. And frankly, just as a bit of background, the way these access issues usually occur is through a private property negotiation. A private property owner would negotiate access to the site, would of course make their site compatible, which would mean bringing an industrial use to a mixed use, and then they would pay in to the master planners or master plan developers site improvement budget. In this case, you have multiple access roads, private roads. I spoke to you tonight about the new traffic light at River and Rio Salado. I believe that was to the tune of $850,000. Just another example of part of what property owners will buy into to become part of this master plan development. So we've always said any third parties that would like to have access, that's a private negotiation issue. that can be privately negotiated. In this case, the opposition chose to file a lawsuit to determine that. That lawsuit is pending in the courts, and I believe strongly it is a separate issue from the zoning case before you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman DiDomenico. Mr. Graff, I was wondering if you were familiar with the mayor's new hometown for all policy, since it has to do with new developments in Tempe.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioner Amorosi. I am absolutely aware of it, and on a personal basis, very much in favor of it. For the benefit of those that are watching, the homestead policy basically will, I'm sorry, I misquoted it. The name of it again, Mr. Amorosi? The
Hometown for all.
Homestead. I'm dealing with a site in Gilbert called the Homestead right now, so my apology. Yes, so the policy in question encourages developers, really of all types, to potentially make a donation, an in lieu donation to the Affordable Housing Fund if affordable housing units are not being provided on the site. And in this case, we've been very straightforward that the proposed development and the product type is that of truly a luxury or a market or market plus. That being said, I'm very familiar with it. I'm happy to state on the record that Mayor and I have had a conversation about this project and the new policy. And I can't make any committals tonight in terms of any specific donations. We're just not at that part in the process, but I do want to make you, fully aware that we are aware of it. We are discussing it with the mayor. I'm personally very much in support of it, and I believe the last time I was before this commission was for a Habitat for Humanity affordable housing development. So I'm right in tune with what's trying to be accomplished here.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it and the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sumners.
Thanks so much. Just a quick question, if we could, Mr. Graff. The building height on the staff report says 80 feet. Although everything I see on your plans shows a 4-story residential, which is typically more like 50 or 60. Can you just address that real quick?
Absolutely. No, it's a good point of clarification. Our PAD needs to incorporate the existing office as well as the retail and multifamily. Because of that, our PAD development standards have to show the maximum height to the top of the tallest building within our PAD. So in this case, the office is at 80 feet, and it's actually allowed to go up to 85 feet to mechanical. Our residential development is approximately 70 feet.
Got it. Okay, thanks very much. There was also a very nice letter in the back of the packet that had a good suggestion for the name of the
I saw that.
development. So just for your consideration, the Caitlin might be a good one. Thank you.
The Caitlin has been circulated to the full development team, and we appreciated getting that type of feedback from the community very much. So I would hate for Caitlin's brother to get the better of her.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
That's good. I was expecting Commissioner Sumners to throw the Sumner into the ring. So, Commissioner Bauer, I thought I saw your hand up, but it is not now. Did you have a question?
I may have one after the opposition speaks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I don't see any other commission questions, so I am going to call staff. Diana, if you would be so kind.
Thank you. I think we'll wait for them to bring up our staff presentation. Ben covered most of the elements within the application. Is Greg bringing that up?
He is. We're working on it. There it is.
Super, thank you. Okay, the zoning map amendment is for the heavy industrial to become mixed use with a high density. And the planned area development is to establish the development standards for all 3 lots, as you just had a discussion about. Lot 1 had previously established standards with a variance actually for the height that would become part of this PAD with the existing established standards. And then the apartments and the commercial component that are lots 2 and 3 would have their own standards. And then the development plan review is for the site plan, building elevations, and landscape for lots 2 and 3, again, because lot 1 is already developed. The total site is 14.2 acres. And this shows the location of the PAD in the context of the larger master plan development. This site was previously approved, you may recall, as the Millennium back in 2018. That project did not move forward, but it did contemplate about 260 apartments on this Lot 2 site as part of that original entitlement. Okay, next page. This is a little hard to read, but this is a breakout that's color coded to each of the lots with the standards for each of the properties with their setbacks. Along Rio Salado, we have a 14-foot easement for transit, anticipating potential future improvements for streetcar. As a result of that, one of the things that staff worked with the applicant on was to make sure that we had sufficient room outside of that easement for the long-term maintenance of street trees, so that we didn't have a situation where the mature landscaping was removed. So they pushed the taller trees back closer to the buildings and had to actually relocate some of their proposed utilities to accommodate the growth of the trees in that area. Next slide. And this outlines the 2 different sites for the development plan review, with the apartments on the west and the 3 small pad buildings on the commercial site to the east. And that's the property that's adjacent to the Brock property to the east of this development. Next slide. And this shows the proposed landscape. The palette was somewhat established by the existing palette within the other portions of what's known as 2100 Rio. This is referred to as Rio East. So the street trees, they did try to tie some of the species in, some of the ground covers, but on the residential side, there are a lot more tree species and density of plant material, and it's a more lush environment adjacent to the residential, and then a little more sparse on the commercial side that ties in with the other commercial buildings within the 2100 Rio development. Along the river drive, they have a combination of trees, trying to put some larger shade trees on the west side of the sidewalk, such as pistache. I think that's what you saw in the drive or the flyby that they did that were red. Presumably it was taken in the fall. So they're trying to provide some trees that provide different colors, different times of the year. Next slide. This is a caption of all of the elevations of this site. I realize it's a huge building, but it is broken down into different components. The narrowest portion along Rio Salado is that second image down. The dark portion is what would be visible right on Rio Salado, and then the part that's kind of shaded out or screened out is what would be seen further back, recessed, and there are some dimensions there that show the different depths of the project as you go along the curved river drive. The third image down shows the garage elevations, which would be visible from the west lot, which is part of the 2100 Rio. And then the last image there is what is seen on the north side of the building, which would be facing the existing office complex. Next slide, please. The buildings on the commercial side are a 1-story product. They are for a combination of commercial uses, retail and restaurant. They've provided enough parking to meet both drive-through and sit-down and take-out type of uses, which would be compatible with apartments being next door. So they are trying to create a synergy between the different uses. Both the office lot and the commercial retail restaurant site are fully parked. The reduction request is only for the residential component. Staff did review their parking analysis and felt that a 10% reduction was appropriate for the area and the combination of uses that they're proposing. Next slide. These are some street elevations that shows the context of the whole development as it would be seen from Rio Salado. Next slide. And you should be familiar with these. These are the same images. I don't have the fancy flyby, but this shows you the elevations. Next slide. There was a neighborhood meeting. This was a virtual meeting held back in September. There were 3 representatives from the property adjacent to the site with the east, and I did attend that meeting. For public input, we did receive 2 emails and 1 phone call. The first email was regarding the name. Obviously, we do not have any input on the naming of projects. That is entirely up to the developer, but the Cameron is the existing streetlights project, and his sister, Caitlin, is requesting that the Caitlin be used for the new project that Streetlights is developing. I'll leave that up to the developer. We also had the opposition letter and follow-up information from the property owner to the east, and they're seeking access to this development to their site, and they have concerns about traffic from this development as it might impact their driveway existing that's on Rio Salado Parkway. We did receive 1 phone call from a property owner on the south side of Rio Salado Parkway. The concerns were, again, about traffic, but also existing parking issues on River Drive, south of the intersection. And the concern was that people are parking so close to the intersection at Rio Salado that it's hard to turn into and out of River Drive. I have forwarded that information to traffic engineering. It's not really relevant to a project that hasn't been entitled yet. It's more a condition possibly of the existing businesses in the area, and they will be looking into that. Next slide, please. The staff recommendation is approval, and the applicant has reviewed these conditions. The only unique condition of approval is related to the canopy roofs, which were proposed as an asphalt shingle, and staff is recommending that those be replaced either with a concrete tile or of similar color or metal panel, that they should not be using asphalt shingle on a project of this caliber. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Commission, questions? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chair DiDomenico. Ms. Kaminsky, did the developer agree to the change in the roofing materials?
Yes, he did.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Sumners.
Just a quick question. Diana, I think you mentioned that the property owner to the east is looking for access. The only thing I saw in any of the paper that, I don't know, that I could recall was they wanted financial relief. They were looking for compensation. They actually do want access as well?
Yes, they were seeking to have access to River Drive, which has the new signalized intersection. And apparently there were discussions with the development team that they couldn't come into an agreement for however they would participate in that.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the commission? I'm not seeing any other hands. So I will now open the hearing up to public comment. And if anybody attending wishes to be heard, you can always raise your hand. I don't see any messages to that effect. Staff, who do we think wants to be heard here?
Chairman, Mr. David Brooks is here. He's wanting to speak
Oh,
on
there I
this.
do. I see him now. Okay. Mr. Brooks, are you with us and would you like to be heard?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. Thank you.
Name and address for the record if you could.
I will do that. My name is David Brooks. I'm with the law firm of Brooks and Affiliates. I represent the Brock parties who are just to the east. It's Brock Family Partnership and Brock Properties 2 LLC, and their predecessor owner, Jerry Brock, who is a longtime Tempe resident. My address is 4320 East Brown Road, Suite 111 in Mesa. 85205. If you need my telephone number, it's 480-890-8195. So, you need any more
That,
identifying information, Mr. Chairman?
nope, that's got you identified. Go ahead and you can make your presentation. I don't know if we have, if you need us to bring any of the exhibits up, just let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. Mr. Graff mentioned that he didn't think that my client's opposition really had anything to do with the zoning issues that are before the commission. But as is reflected in the letter that I sent to staff yesterday, it's a January 25th, 2021 letter that I hope has been forwarded to you. One of the provisions in the zoning code basically outlines an important principle, which is that those who deal with the city need to be held to a standard to comply with the promises and obligations they undertake with respect to the city. And if they don't comply, then the decision-making body can withhold approval or deny approval or ask that the party who is requesting approval of zoning or permits comply with prior commitments. And so this situation raises a unique issue. It is part of the zoning code. It is part of the zoning question. And that really is whether the city and the commission on behalf of the city will hold those who deal with the city to prior agreements and prior obligations. Or are we going to let those folks just sort of ignore their commitments and move forward without having complied? That's the issue or primary issue that we have here. The zoning code is section 6-604, and the commission can look at that, but it is an important part of the code. My clients, can we bring up Mr. Graff's slide 10? Is that, okay, great. I think it's the map that's slide 10, hopefully.
I think, Greg, this is the staff presentation.
It was slide 10 of the presentation Mr. Graff was giving. Yeah, okay. So, you know, does my cursor show up there? Can you see my cursor?
We can't see your cursor, so you'll have to kind of talk us through it.
Okay. So my clients own properties immediately to the east of this property that is subject of the current request. And the property that's subject to the current request historically has been referred to, at least by those who have worked and been in the area, as the bowling alley. It was right there by the old pit that was the subject of remediation years ago and was part of the obligation that Mr. Leclerc took on when he acquired the property from Mira Vista, and when he took on the obligations of Mira Vista for property that was to the east of the Tempe marketplace. The Brocks, there's a building immediately to the east of the road, sort of in the middle of the picture. That is a warehouse that is there right now. And just to the north of that warehouse, you see a property that is kind of, it's not a rectangle, but it has, it's an angled piece of property that has a little building on it, and you can see cars and stuff. Those are the properties that are owned by the Brocks. And I want to mention one of the things that Mr. Graff commented about, which is that, I mean, this issue is part of the litigation that Mr. Abraham and I are involved in. and that is whether the Brock property is adjacent to what was in the amendment as a term defined as the Tellurian properties. Our view and our argument with the court is that the property along what we call the bowling alley, where you see lot 3, lot 2, lot 1, which lot 1 is where the Boyer building is and the parking garage behind the Boyer building, all are part of what was the bowling alley, and that all of that property was subject to the agreement that was entered with the city that would provide them an opportunity to get a 40-year GIPLET benefit. And the GIPLET benefit was valued by staff with the city council back in August of 2016 at about 64.8 million, because they were going to get about 40 years of tax abatement as part of this agreement with the city. There's property north of the identified property for zoning that also was part of the original plan and the original property that were subject to the agreement. That property once was owned by Tellurian, and it was sold to Boyer, and is sort of included in that property that goes around the curve with the 202 freeway. So the issue became that in August of 2016, when the developer wanted to confirm the 40-year GIPLET, and the council was considering a second amendment to the assumption agreement that Tellurian had already entered with the city. They wanted to confirm that it would be for 40 years. That was part of a proposed amendment that was presented to the city council. And then, in addition, during that meeting on August 4th, 2016, a motion was made by a member of the council to address connectivity. And the connectivity problem is that the Brocks immediately to the east are in a spot where you can see to the south of the building, there's entrance and egress to Rio Salado. And you can see to the east that you're very close within, I don't know, a couple of blocks, maybe a quarter of a mile from the intersection, the overpass of the 202. And then all of a sudden you have the proposed increase of what this proposal is asking for of over 335 apartment units, the retail, the office building that is already there, all of that increasing traffic along Rio Salado, which is why they put the light at Rio Salado and River Road. When they had that discussion, my clients were under the impression during that city council meeting that there would be a provision made so that the developer would have to talk with them and work on commercial best efforts so that my clients, the Brocks, could access River Road from their property immediately to the east so that they could then use the light at River Road and Rio Salado. Because the increase in traffic is already making it difficult anytime you want to come out of the Brocks property to make a left turn. And once this development's done, that will be even worse. There has been talk in the past that the city might even add, as for the growth there, a median in Rio Salado. And if that happens, then my clients may not even have the option to go anywhere, may not have the ability to turn left. They may always have to go right. So the issue becomes that they need to be able to have access to that road, both for traffic flow and also to facilitate safety. Cars in and out of that area, coming in and out with a street light is obviously much safer than passing on a busy road like Rio Salado without a light. And you're not going to get any lights to the east of the Bronx because it's too close to the freeway. There's already a light there near the freeway.
Mr. Brooks,
So-
I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap it up. I'm sure we've got quite a few questions waiting for you.
So the issue is that the developer agreed and signed an agreement that said that they would engage and take the commercial best efforts to facilitate access to all the adjacent parcels. My clients have parcels that are adjacent, and the developer has not used, in our view, commercial best efforts to work with us to accomplish getting to access, and that's also why there's a lawsuit pending on that issue right now. So we would encourage the commission to deny review, or at least delay its review while this lawsuit moves through the process. Thank you. I'm happy to handle any questions.
Mr. Brooks, thank you. Hold tight. Let me move around my list. Commissioner Bauer.
Mr. Brooks, explain to me why you believe that the applicant and property owners to your west have not used commercial best efforts. Exactly, it's a very, very undefined term, but exactly take me briefly through that process. Meetings have been held, offers have been made. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, yes. What I would say is there have been no substantive meetings that have yielded reasonable negotiations for price, cost, what the developer might ask my client to contribute, etc. We've offered, but they've never come to the table in a way that has allowed for substantive negotiations that can move forward. This process has been going on since 2016. And as you can see with the current plan, there's not a proposal in the plan that would facilitate creating an access point from my client's property onto River Road. That is part of what is alleged in the complaint, in the lawsuit. In terms of what will be litigated, it's the contract. My client's position is that they are third-party beneficiaries to the contract between the city and Tellurian. And we have tried to work with the developer and his lawyers and just haven't been able to get to the table. And frankly, in terms of where recent discussions have been, we were at a point where Mr. Tellurian's counsel was supposed to get us cost information relating to the development of the road and the light so we could talk about numbers, and they haven't chosen to do that.
Thank you.
Let's see. Well, I have one question. The points you raise somewhat esoteric, as to which parcel controlled the border, as to access and cross easement. But practically speaking, let's just say that this project was built just the way it was presented today, and it's standing there right now. How would your client be harmed should the court case rule in your client's favor? In other words, is there irreparable damage? Access could not be created and given to your client's parcel because of the way this development is designed. Take me through that.
I can't say that if it's built as it is today, that there wouldn't be, the access couldn't be accomplished sometime later. It would require tearing down portions of the wall that has already been installed along the area where the office building is, most likely, and then installing appropriate roads and all of those kinds of things. So I think it could happen later, But the issue becomes, in my view, the process of why would the city want to not enforce its code if somebody isn't choosing to comply with their prior obligations? And I recognize you could view that as an esoteric position, but it is a part of the code, and if somebody's not complying with their prior agreements, I think it's something the commission should consider.
And I appreciate that comment. My reading of it is a somewhat esoteric question or issue, had more to do with, Mr. Graff had earlier mentioned that when originally the agreements with the city and you know, I read your letter and the attachments to it. I don't know where those boundaries, at some point in time, agreements were made that said that the party that was getting the GIPLET benefit would grant these rights to access and use commercially reasonable efforts. But I don't know where that parcel ended at that point in time, and if subsequent acquisition of additional parcels extended those boundaries. That's just beyond me, and which is probably why it's gone to a court hearing. So, you know, it's just a complicated matter, but I was just really interested in what harm could be done to your client's parcel if this thing moved forward. So, and you answered that. I appreciate it. Other questions from the commission? I do not see any. Oh, yes, I do. Commissioner Cassano. No? Commissioner Cassano, I saw your hand for a moment.
Oh, you did. Now you hear me now.
Now,
I
now we hear
was muting myself.
Okay.
Mr. Brooks, can you tell me where you are in the process of at the court? Has it just been filed? Is this scheduled for hearings? Has depositions been taken, or what? Where are you in the process, please?
So as a lawyer, I feel like the motion to dismiss is not likely to succeed. I think that this case is going to move forward. And so the developer has not answered the complaint yet. We're not yet in disclosure or discovery. So I would expect that if the parties can't resolve the matter, there's probably quite a long time of litigation to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commission, any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the applicant to come back and address any points that have been brought up or anything else you'd like to add.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll be very brief. You know, I think it's, to me, been made evident that the DRC tonight has been asked to, you know, take the place of the Maricopa County Superior Court. And the only, you know, two issues that I heard come up would be, should our zoning case be denied because we in some way failed to meet a prior agreement? Well, we are under no notice or even initial conversations with anyone from the city telling us that we have failed to meet an agreement with the city. So on the record, the only party stating that an agreement has not been met is Mr. Brooks. And two, I think the only other issue that was brought up that I think this commission would normally discuss is traffic. And we have spent already to the tune of the, you know, $850,000 on the new traffic light for River, which is a private drive, but also we'll continue to have other traffic mitigation efforts. So I think that's also been addressed. And finally, I mean, at its core, from a planning perspective, because that's what I do, the city would not find itself, I don't believe, in a position of requiring an access point between a mixed-use site and a heavy industrial site. And that's what that is today. And I think just from a planning principle, that's why you don't see a staff report requiring an access point, because that just wouldn't make sense from a safety standpoint, from a road construction standpoint. So I haven't seen evidence under the standards for a rezoning, for a PAD, or for a DPR review to deny the case. But if there's any questions I can clarify, please do let me know.
Commissioner Bauer.
Mr. Graff, and if you can't answer this because it is subject to your pending litigation, I understand. Is the property in question your application and those properties to the north are part of the GIPLET?
I will have, I'm going to ask Andy Abraham, the litigator that is present, to answer that question. If we can unmute Andy Abraham, just because that is probably getting into a subject of the litigation.
Mr. Abraham, when you, if you could give us again, name and address.
Is staff able to see Mr. Abraham on the list still?
I see him there, but he is still muted. Nope, something's happening.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Great. My name is Andrew Abraham. I'm with the law firm Birch and Cracchiolo, 1850 North Central, Suite 1700, Phoenix, 85004. And I do not intend to get into any litigation issues, but I do want to answer the question that was asked. All of this property is under the original development agreement for the remediation of about 70-ish or so acres. And so all of it is under that original development agreement. But because of certain time periods that were applicable to that development agreement, the future development agreement and the future GIPLET would have to go back for a new process, and there is no pending process requesting a GIPLET at this point in time.
Mr. Bauer, did that answer your question?
It did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Abraham.
You bet.
All right, I failed to say this out loud. It was just something I was saying in my head, but I see no other members of the public who've requested to be heard, so we're closing the public comments portion of this hearing. We've just heard from the applicant. I have another question for the applicant, Mr. Graff. It was earlier stated, I believe, Diana Kaminsky had mentioned that the applicant is all right with all conditions of approval as drafted. So I just want to hear in the affirmative if that's the case.
That is correct. We, as the applicant, are in favor of all requested stipulations.
Okay. Thank you very much. If you have anything else to add, closing remarks, go ahead and do that quickly. Otherwise, we'll bring it to commission discussion.
No, I appreciate all your time, and I'll close out my comments at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. At this point, we can entertain a motion. We can have some preliminary commission discussion. I see Commissioner Bauer, your hand is up. I don't know if that's a holdover. Do you have something?
It is not, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate everybody's presentation tonight. I think that, there's been a lot of good dialogue. We have what I believe is a very good and solid land use plan before us. There clearly are issues that need to be addressed at other levels that are not subject to the Development Review Commission's purview, but they are important issues. And it's a situation to where this entire development that began in the mid 2000s to redevelop a blighted piece of property has been very successful. And the one thing that this commission and the city tends to look to is efficiency of traffic movement between adjacent properties. And I think that's critical here. However, I agree with Mr. Graff that the current use of the Brock property, do they need access right now? They may say they do. The applicant may say they do not. There is certainly a dissimilarity between the activities occurring on these two properties that would require further study by the city. I do believe that cross-access, should the Brock property transition to a use that is more consistent with the general plan, would be appropriate. And I believe that the applicant has done a good job at providing the opportunity for that access to occur should a private development agreement be reached between the parties. Mr. Chairman, I have no issue with the applications before us, with the approvals that we are asked to render, and at the appropriate time, I'd be willing to make a motion for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Eloquently put. Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman DiDomenico. I just want to say I like the modern southwestern design of the building that they and how it mirrors the Cameron. I appreciate that they broke up the mass and have those nice courtyards in there. The commercial aspect seems like it's a little bit of an afterthought compared to how nice the residential part looks, but I'm not going to, push that. I'm more concerned that it becomes active retail space. And yeah, as far as the when I look at the properties and the conflict there, it looks like the property to the north is where all roads lead. And that since that's still undeveloped, that there's still a possibility of things working out with that when that parcel comes online. But I could see the concern where if there's heavy industrial equipment, you don't want to see that rolling through River Drive like Commissioner Bauer was saying as far as the uses and the inconsistency when you come to a street. So I'm in favor of this project. I'll probably be voting for it. Yes. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bauer here. I move approval of Rio East application ZON 200004, application PAD 200006, and development plan review application DPR 200127, subject to the stipulations outlined in the staff report and concurred to by the applicant.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Seconded, Commissioner Sumners.
It has been moved by Commissioner Bauer, seconded by Commissioner Sumners. Do we have any discussion? Anyone have any comments? I don't see any hands. So I will call for a vote. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Casano.
Aye.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Commissioner Sumners,
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
It has been approved unanimously. I appreciate the very eloquent and descriptive presentations by all parties involved tonight. I remind everyone that the actions taken tonight, as I had mentioned in our preamble, are subject to the rights of the parties to appeal. And I thank everyone for their participation. With that, concludes our cases tonight. Do we have any commission member announcements? Anyone have anything they want to share? Don't see anything. I'll announce that I hope everybody's getting their shots and staying healthy. I'd like to be able to do these things. Maybe this spring we'll be back in person, and it's a much better it's a much better process when we have all of us together and invite the public in to see this beautiful new council chambers that the city has built. Anything from staff? Saparna, Ryan, anybody have anything?
Chairman, would you like me to go over the agenda
Yes.
item for February 9th?
Yes, please.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
And this is the
The
meeting for
next-
February 9th.
This is correct, Chairman. For the February 9th meeting, it's a fairly long agenda. We do have a new, sorry, I'm losing my pen. There is a compliance hearing that was actually the original use permit was heard by the hearing officer back before the DRC took over the use permit hearings. And there's a compliance hearing that is coming up. So that's on the agenda for Sun Bar located at 24 West 5th Street. It's for a Series 6 bar and entertainment. There were 2 use permits for that. Then there is a use permit for a massage establishment for RM Medical Massage at 8400 South Kyrene. There's a use permit to allow gun shop for Sonoran Armory LLC located on 2011 East 5th Street, suite number 10. Request for a use permit to allow a tobacco retailer for high maintenance located at 411 South Mill Avenue, Suite 103, and 2 use permits for to allow a Series 6, allow a bar Series 6 and entertainment indoor live music for Casa at 5 and 15 East 6th Street. Casa is where, if you know where Hippie Gypsy used to be, that space is vacant. So Casa is wanting to expand into that area now. So that's that use permit for. Then there is a request for a use permit standard to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 5 feet. 7 inches for Larson residence located at 1408 East Todd Drive. And there is a request for a general plan amendment, an amended PAD, and use permit for tandem parking and a development plan review for 367 dwelling units and commercial uses for downtown flats located on 433 South Farmer Avenue. If you remember, Chairman and Commission members, this is where the office project was originally entitled, and actually is currently an active permit case. But this is due to the applicant is requesting an amended PAD and it requires a general plan amendment And I had sent out the general plan amendment notification for any comments for the 60-day comment period. I had sent out to the commission some time ago. So those are all the items on the agenda for February 9th.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions and comments, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good evening.
you.
Good night, everybody.